this session we're going to look at how you pick up stitches. You may need to pick up stitches to make, say, a button border, or you may need to pick up stitches to create the edge of a blanket. For whatever reason, if you need to pick up stitches, there are 3 different places you may need to do them. So you may need to pick up stitches along the vertical edge, like that, for a button border. You may need to pick them up along the horizontal edge, maybe for a blanket border. But what's quite likely is you may have to pick them up along a shaped edge, like this one. This is a smaller version of a neckline that you might get on a cardigan. So you need to pick up along this straight edge there, around this shaped edge, and up the vertical edge there. So we're going to talk about how to deal with that in the next video. In this particular video, I'm just looking at how to pick up along straight edges. And the first place we're going to look at is along the vertical edge. So when you've been knitting this, you may have slipped the first stitch. Now that's not a great idea for when you're going to be picking up stitches in this edge. It's fine for shawls and scarves because it gives a nice edge, but for picking up, just like when you're seaming, you should not slip the first stitch. So that's one thing. Second thing is, it's so much easier to pick up if your panel that you're picking up on has been blocked. And thirdly, you might like to pick up with a slightly smaller needle than you're going to use for the rest of this button band. And the reason for that is if you've made a mistake and you have to pull it out, you're going to leave holes. So you might leave holes where you didn't really need if you've used a bigger needle. Okay, so use a slightly smaller needle. How do we pick up then? Well, in your pattern, you will be given the number of stitches you need to pick up. So let's assume we need to pick up 24 stitches across here. You could measure it out and divide it up and so on, but the easiest way to actually do that is to just fold the edge in half, if that's possible, depending on what you're working on, and pop a pin in where the fold is. And that divides it in that edge into half. Just straighten that up a bit. And then fold it again and pop a pin in the edge. So we've now divided that half into 2. And the same thing for the other half. Fold that into half and pop another pin in there. So we've now got 4 equal lengths that we need to pick up in. And I've made the maths quite easy deliberately. So because we're picking up 24 stitches, we need to pick up 6 in each of these sections. Okay, so let's start looking at how we actually do the picking up. The first thing to do is to pick up under a stitch right in the very corner. And I like to go under both parts of a stitch like that. Not just one part, because I feel that leaves too much of a hole. So I will go under a whole stitch. So let me grab my yarn and show you how we pick up. So just make a loop, and under the first stitch, you're going to just pull that loop through where you've put your needle. So that's picking up. And now, from now on, we're going to be picking up and knitting as we go. So we've got to pick up 6 here. So I'm going to go under the next row end, under both parts of that stitch, and pick up another one and knit it. So that's 2. I think I'll do my next one here in the next row end. That's 3. And then let's see where we are with our 6. We've got to do 3 more. Okay, so I'm going to actually leave that next hole there and go into the one after that, because I think that is going to be a bit more even. So that's 4. I'll go into that one, 5, and I will go into that one, 6. So there, we've picked up 6 stitches. We don't need to worry about any of the gaps like this, because they will close up as we work our border. And so you do that all the way along. Okay, well that's fine. Supposing though that you have an issue and you've picked up that many stitches that it says in the pattern, and you've worked a few rows, and something like this might be happening. I'll just zoom out a little bit. You may be picking up nice and evenly, like on the left-hand side picture there. That's fine if you are, just carry on. But you might be picking up and the work ends up looking like this. That means too few stitches have been picked up and the edge is going to pull in. Or you might have this situation where it puckers and flares out, and that means you've picked up too many stitches. Well, if the pattern tells you how many to pick up, how can you have picked up too many or too few? Well, it could be that your tension is out. That is the most common cause. And so you might need to just adjust what they've said so that it fits you. But another reason might be that supposing you're working a cardigan and you've made it longer in the body. So now when you come to pick up your button edge, how do you know how many stitches to pick up? Well, we can solve all of that quite simply. So either it's not picking up nicely, like in these two situations, or you need to pick up a different number for a deliberate reason. I can show you what you need to do for that. So I'm just going to undo this. I'm going to take it all out and I'm going to take the pins out. We are going to be picking up on the fly now using a really simple but effective rule about how stocking stitch works. So again, we pick up in the corner. So let's just grab my yarn and pick the first stitch up. And the way we're going to be picking up is we're going to be using the relationship of the width of a stitch to the height of a row in stocking stitch. And it's sort of like 3 to 4. So what that means is, just zoom in slightly for a little bit, that we need to pick up 1 stitch in the edge of every 3 rows. So let's just get that tail out of the way and pick up the second one. There. And in the third one, there's the third row there. So you pick up in 3 rows and then you miss a row. So we're going to miss that hole there. Then we pick up in the next 3 holes. And I'm again on every row, I'm going under the 2 bars of that last stitch. So there's the next 3 and miss a row, that one. Here's the next 3. And you do this all the way along. And you will find if you're working on stocking stitch, this will work absolutely fine. As I say, it's because of the relationship of the width of a stitch to the height of a row in stocking stitch, and it's always quite similar. Skip that one. Sometimes it's hard to see, so just pull your work apart. Knit 3, 1, 2, 3, and skip 1. Always make sure that when you reach the end, you make sure you put a stitch in the last stitch, because you don't want that odd funny thing at the top. So skip 1 there. So I've got 1, I'm nearly there, 2, 3, skip the next one there, and then I've got 1, 2, and it might not always end up as neatly as this. I happen to have 3, but it doesn't matter if you don't, as long as you pick up in the last one. That's important. So there we have it. That's how to pick up along stocking stitch if the number that the pattern says isn't working for you. Okay. Obviously, if this is going to end up being in some sort of stitch pattern like a rib, then you do need the right number of stitches to make the rib work. So you might have to do a little bit of maths to work that out. But it's better to have to do that and have a nice flat edge than to have one that's going a bit awry. Now let's just come out, and now what I will do is show you how to pick up along the top. Well, that's nice and easy. So here we have the horizontal edge of a piece of work, and all we need to do for that is pick up stitch for stitch. So here's my first cast off stitch. Again, I've gone right under both parts of that stitch. So I will pull that through, and there is my first stitch. Now I'll go under the next cast off stitch. So just one stitch for every cast off stitch. Nice and easy. Try not to make this too tight. It still needs to be fairly flexible. And just keep going all the way along like that. Okay, so there we have it. Along the horizontal, pick up stitch for stitch. Along the vertical, in stocking stitch, pick up in 3 rows out of every 4. Okay, now the next thing I want to show you is what if you've got garter stitch, because not the same rules don't apply for garter stitch, they're slightly different. So if you're picking up along the edge, again, go right into the corner to start. And the relationship between stitches and rows in garter stitch is that the width of one stitch is equal to the height of 2 rows, and 2 rows are one of these ridges. So that makes the maths really easy. All you have to do is pick up 1 stitch in each ridge, or if you prefer, 1 stitch between each ridge. It's up to you. I'm going to pick up 1 stitch in each ridge, so I'm going to go under that part there of that ridge, that edge bit, and pick up and knit my next stitch. It can be a bit fiddly, whoops, as you can see in garter stitch. There we go. So I've got 2 stitches picked up now. And then when I go to the next ridge, I'm going to pick up in the same part of the ridge to make it all nice and uniform all the way along, and pick that one up. And then the next one, and using my finger and thumb of my left hand just to help here to get the stitch over the yarn. And there we go. So that's picking up in garter stitch for a nice flat edge. Okay, and obviously if you're picking up along the top, you just pick up stitch for stitch, just like stocking stitch. Okay, so that's it for this video. The next one, we're going to look at how you deal with situations where you've got shaping like this.